So there's just a couple things on jackets. 1900 was our jacket of the month for January. And there's a couple things with jackets I really wanted to just show you and give you some close-ups on jacket finishes. I hear these repeatedly, and that's why I kind of wanted to show you and make sure we've got this clear and make sure we're all on the same page. Whenever I do a muslin, or actually whenever I make the jacket, these two sections right here, this would be the front and then the side. They don't meet, or even if the whole front is one piece, there's always going to be a little bit of a jog here. And the reason being is because this only has a seam allowance. So that's the facing. The front facing finishes the front here, but this has a hem. So you're always going to have, it's going to be about a 3/4 of an inch is what that's going to be. And in this jacket here, what I'm going to do is show you what you want is for this all to come just like that. And so the way that's going to happen is you notice this only has a seam allowance. The curve in the front or the square, it doesn't have to, whatever shape it is, it's only going to have a seam allowance and then it's going to have a hem. So this will be turned up. This will be turned up like just the seam allowance amount. The facing comes to there and then the hem starts. So that way you have about a 1-inch hem. And that way the bottom is smooth. The facing is here. You can see the facing is here, and then the lining picks up. So that's how the bottom is supposed to look. I don't sew my linings down just because you've got less room for error if that lining is sewn down. I know I'm not a perfect sewer. No one needs to tell me. And so I'm always a little happier when I leave my linings loose at the bottom. I just leave them loose at the bottom. Everywhere else is sewn, but I leave them loose at the bottom. And I've always thought to myself, one day when I become a perfect seamstress, I'll connect them. But I haven't gotten to that day yet. So I leave them loose and I'm happy to have them loose. But I wanted you to understand, I see it so often in workshops where everyone tries to, now this is on silhouette patterns, everyone tries to ease in this whole entire seam. And they get it even at the bottom, but the whole seam puckers and it looks terrible. So that jog is expected. It's about 3/4 of an inch. Start at the top, sew to the bottom, let that happen. And it doesn't matter if it's fabric or leather. It doesn't make a difference which one it is. The second thing I wanted to show you is finishing off the sleeves. I love this method. I include it in all of our silhouette patterns. Basically, this sleeve needs to be hemmed by the lining. And so it'll automatically, the lining is shorter than the sleeve. Again, that's all built into your pattern. But what you want to do when you're sewing it is you'll take your jacket, you sew your lining in, of course, first, and then take your lining and push it down the sleeves. And both of these edges are going to be raw. So just push it all the way down, and both the sleeve and the lining both will be raw. Then what I do is I'm recommending that you pin and put the seam, line the seams up together. And again, it's raw edge to raw edge just so that it doesn't twist. If the sleeves twist, you're not going to be able to get your arm down the sleeve. Then come in between the lining and the jacket. So come in between here and just pull this up. Just pull the lining or the sleeve. It doesn't matter, or you can pull both. And just kind of gingerly, just keep pulling. They'll both come with it. They're pinned together at the bottom, those two seams. Both the seams of the lining and the seams of the jacket. Those seams, with the sleeve straight, should be pinned together so that they don't get twisted. So just pull and pull and pull. And what will happen as you pull out is there's going to be wrong sides together. You're going to flip this. It'll look like this to where it's right sides together. And you can literally just stitch a seam allowance on the sewing machine. Just lay it down, stitch, stitch, stitch all the way around. Nothing has to be done by hand. It'll all be held up by the lining. The formula is the sleeve minus 2 hems plus a seam allowance. That will give you the lining length that it should be. It's the sleeve, the correct hem for the correct length for the sleeve, minus 2 hems, because once it turns up, there's 1 there and 2 there, plus a seam allowance will give you the formula. That is, again, all built into our silhouette pattern. So now you can see with that sewn, the lining is cut shorter, And then once I pull it out, the lining will get hemmed by, I'm sorry, the sleeve, I'm saying that backwards. The sleeve will get hemmed by the lining. It's just that simple. And you're going to just kind of pull it out to where the lining is all the way. And actually what I do when I'm making my jackets brand new, I just let them hang for a couple days. I don't try to press the bottom of the sleeve. I don't do any of that. Just let that hang. And you'll just see that it'll just completely come out to where it's supposed to. And then you'll have the lining pick up once the sleeve is in place. Now, if you're dealing with any other patterns, you can still do this because even if you have a placket back here, it's still done the same way. The placket is ignored unless the placket actually functions. But most of the jackets today, even that have a placket, they actually don't function. They're just there, and the sleeve lining is still done the same way. So finishing off the sleeves, finishing off the bottom of the jacket, those are the two things I really wanted to touch on today. And again, you all know I love jackets. One of the reasons I love jackets is because you can pick this fun lining out to go inside. No, really, they're just so expensive. They're so expensive, and we can get them to fit so much better than any place else in the store or anywhere. And they're just beautiful. Happy sewing from Silhouette Patterns.